Remember this portion of the story of God as it is written in the book we love, Luke chapter 10, verses 25 through 37, from the Inclusive Bible Translation. An expert on the law stood up to put Jesus to the test and said, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit everlasting life?" Jesus answered, "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" The expert on the law replied, "You must love the Most High God with all your heart and all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." Jesus said, "You have answered correctly. Do this and you'll live." But the expert on the law, seeking self-justification, pressed Jesus further. "And just who is my neighbor?" Jesus replied, "There was a traveler going down from Jerusalem to Jericho who fell prey to robbers. The traveler was beaten, stripped naked, and left half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road. The priest saw the traveler lying beside the road, but passed on by the other side. Likewise, there was a Levite who came the same way. This one too saw the afflicted traveler and passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan who was taking the same road also came upon the traveler, and filled with compassion, approached the traveler and dressed the wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then the Samaritan put the wounded person on a donkey, went straight to an inn, and there took care of the injured one. The next day the Samaritan took out 2 silver pieces and gave them to the innkeeper with the request, "Look after this person, and if there is any further expense, I'll repay you on the way back." Which of these 3, in your opinion, was the neighbor to the traveler who fell in with the robbers? The answer came, the one who showed compassion. Jesus replied, "Then go and do the same." This is the word of God for the entire world. Thanks be to God.
This is about the 5th or 6th time in my 10 years here that this text has been read, and we've heard a lot of different sermons on the Good Samaritan. There's a lot of different ways you could preach the story of the Good Samaritan. You could preach from the view of the person from the ditch, reflecting on moments when we have been wounded or vulnerable or dependent on unexpected grace. You could preach about interrupting our religion, exploring how compassion often breaks through when we're willing to pause our busy religious lives. You could preach about a love beyond boundaries, challenging the divisions that we create and calling us to reach out across borders and labels and prejudices. You could preach about dangerous compassion, naming the real risks and costs involved in truly loving and serving one another. The first time I heard this text preached on here at Allendale, Don Wendell preached on it and preached about how Allendale was going to choose a different lane at a time when Allendale did not embody the values we valued now. He said, we're going to choose the lane of social justice, and that's what we're going to be known for 10 years from now. And he was right. Or you could preach about paving the Jericho Road, not just offering mercy after harm occurs, but transforming the conditions that created the harm in the first place. Today, though, I want us to begin our Lenten journey by stepping into the uncomfortable, sacred space between stranger and neighbor and asking ourselves a challenging question. What would it take for us here and now to truly move toward each other, to cross the roads we've been afraid to cross and find God in the messy middle? Now, I'm going to tell the story quickly again. When I get to the part that says, "But then a Samaritan," I want you to gasp like you're on a telenovela, okay? A traveler heads down a notoriously dangerous road from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he's attacked, he's robbed, he's beaten, he's left half dead. Two religious figures passed by, first a priest, then a Levite, each carefully avoiding the wounded man. Perhaps they're busy or afraid or uncertain. Maybe they're worried about their own safety, their reputation, or their religious piety. But then a Samaritan. Dun, 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 comes down the road. Someone labeled an outsider, even an enemy. Someone who wouldn't normally be trusted. Now, some preachers have said that for us today, it would be like a member of the Taliban, or maybe for us specifically here, a good example might be, but then one of the Elon Musk Doge boys came down the road. About to defund all the care this guy's going to possibly get. This Samaritan, or this Doge boy, sees the man, and more than seeing, he feels compassion. He moves toward him. He crosses boundaries, tending to the man's wounds, lifting him up, taking him to safety, carrying him at his own expense. This isn't just kindness. This is risky compassion. Jesus purposely makes the Samaritan the hero, intentionally challenging every boundary that his listeners have created about who's good and who's safe and who's worthy. Today, let's not just look at this Samaritan's compassion. Let's also ask ourselves, what boundaries do we need to cross? What could happen if we dared to move from stranger to neighbor? When we hear this story, our first instinct is often to ask ourselves, would I have stopped? Would I have been brave enough, compassionate enough, unbusy enough, faithful enough? We want to believe that we would be the Samaritan in this story, someone who steps across the boundary and offers help. But today, when I look out at you, church, I see something different. I see many who aren't walking down that road at all, but many who are perhaps lying beaten alongside it because life has been hard lately. Some of us have been beaten up by the relentless divisions in our politics. Some of us are weary from the global pandemic that's still casting change on our lives. Many of us are wounded by grief or anxiety or loneliness that just won't lift. Others carry scars of injustice, exclusion, racism, homophobia, transphobia, experiencing violence in words and actions. Some of us are just plain exhausted trying to hold together a fractured family or community or survive economic hardship. Today, maybe we aren't the ones deciding if we'll stop. Maybe we're the ones desperately hoping someone will stop for us. Maybe we're longing for a neighbor who will notice our pain, step across the boundary and say, "You're not alone. Tell me what's ailing you." You know, the sad fact that most people go through their lives without having anyone ever truly listen to them. Here's the truth. Before we can become neighbors who heal, we must acknowledge our own woundedness, our own need for care, compassion, and community. And here in this holy, vulnerable space, perhaps we'll finally begin to truly see each other, not as strangers passing by, but as neighbors offering and receiving grace. The lawyer asks Jesus, "Who is my neighbor?" But notice what he's really asking. He assumes that neighborliness flows outward from himself, that it's something he chooses, something he can measure. And he wants a boundary line drawn so that he knows exactly where his obligation begins and ends. But Jesus flips the whole question around Jesus doesn't tell him who he should consider worthy of his neighborliness. Instead, he tells a story where the one receiving mercy, beaten, vulnerable, lying helpless on the road, experiences neighborliness from someone he'd never have chosen, a Samaritan, an outsider, someone he might have avoided or mistrusted. Jesus turns the question upside down, shifting the focus, who's worthy of my care, to who has shown mercy. Suddenly, neighborliness is not something we dispense, but something we experience, something we receive from unexpected places and unexpected people. Maybe the call for us today isn't just to give compassion, but also to recognize when we need it, to admit our vulnerability, to acknowledge our own wounds, and to let ourselves be cared for, even when it comes from those we consider strangers. So perhaps the real challenge for us this Lent is not just to offer neighborly love, but to receive it. And in the receiving, to see clearly the radical, surprising grace of God transforming strangers into neighbors and neighbors into family. The word stranger carries tension. It's heavy with distance, suspicion, and uncertainty. When we say stranger, we mean someone unknown, someone unfamiliar, someone who might be different enough to feel unsafe. A stranger can be across the globe, or a stranger can maybe be sitting right next to us in church. A face we've seen 100 times but never truly taken time to listen. But the word neighbor feels warm and closer. Neighbor suggests belonging, relationship, trust, even intimacy. A neighbor isn't just physically nearby, they share life with us. Yet Jesus challenges how we should use both words. In this story, he tells us it disrupts our neat categories, breaking open our narrow definitions. In Greek, the word translated as neighbor, plesion, simply means the one who is near. But nearness, Jesus teaches, isn't defined by geography or familiarity, but in compassion and in action. In his story, the neighbor isn't the priest or the Levite, the religious figures who should have been trustworthy, but the Samaritan, the other, the person society has labeled as dangerous, impure, and distant. And so here's the challenge. We often keep the people who are geographically or socially close to us at a safe emotional distance, treating them as strangers. And at the same time, Jesus shows us how a stranger can become our closest neighbor by simply choosing compassion. Friends, if we in our church can't risk crossing boundaries to deeply know and care for each other, if we can't transform strangers in our chairs next to us into neighbors, what hope do we have of offering transformative love beyond these doors? In this season of Lent, may we let go of labels that separate and instead courageously step into real relationships. Because if we cannot see God and each other here, how will the world learn what neighborly love truly looks like? Today, let us break down these divisions. Let us move from stranger to neighbor, from neighbor to family, because when we do, we embody the gospel. And when we embody the gospel, the world itself is transformed. Friends, this real miracle in the story of the Good Samaritan isn't just kindness or charity. The miracle of what happens when someone risks everything to cross the boundary, to move from their comfort zone, to move from being strangers to neighbors, is just that. In our own community at Allendale, we have these Jericho roads too. These roads marked by fear and misunderstanding. And even within a mostly leftist congregation, political divides and the risk of vulnerability and a difference in strategy about how to get there and achieve beloved community. But like the Samaritan, we're invited not simply to walk these roads cautiously, but to transform them. Here today, we have the sacred opportunity, the calling to cross our own chasms, to overcome the barriers that keep us strangers, to imagine what could happen if we stopped hesitating on the roadside and stepped into genuine relationship with one another in this space. Imagine the power if instead of keeping each other at arm's length and easy, shallow conversations, imagine if we chose connection and compassion and courage, if we became neighbors who truly saw and cared for one another. Dr. King once said while he admired the Good Samaritan, he was tired of always rescuing people from a dangerous road. He dreamed of paving that road, of putting lights up, of making it safe for everyone to travel together. Friends, that's what our work is too. We have the power not just to cross boundaries, but to dismantle them altogether. Within these walls, right here in this church, we have the chance to embody that radical love, to stop passing each other like strangers, to start truly knowing each other as neighbors. If we can practice that in here together, we can illuminate even the darkest roads out there. So let's risk it. Let's risk getting to know each other deeply, radically, compassionately, because when we do, when we choose neighborliness over fear, we don't just change ourselves, we together change the world. Let's pave the road. Let's install the street lights. Let's make this path safe for everyone. Let's be neighbors and watch as God transforms us all. Church, we've heard this story again today of a road that was dark, that was dangerous and uncertain, a road of strangers passing strangers, of neighbors who weren't neighbors at all. But today we hear good news. We hear that love crossed the road, that mercy crossed the road, that hope crossed the road, that grace walked across the road. The Samaritan didn't just stop, he stepped in close. He didn't just see, he felt. He didn't just pity, he acted. He didn't just talk, he healed. And friends, today we stand on that same road. It's in our cities, in our neighborhoods, in our homes, a road where mercy must speak louder than fear, where compassion must break stronger than division, where love must rise up louder than our silence. So let's not settle for being strangers who pass each other by, but let us cross that road. Let us bridge that gap. Let's tear down those walls, one brick at a time, one step at a time, until strangers become neighbors, neighbors become friends, friends become family, and family become the beloved community of God. This Lent, let's walk that road. Let's bridge that gap. Let's carry each other's burdens. Let's love each other fiercely, because in loving our neighbor, we truly find God. And so here is my challenge to you this morning. Before you leave church this day, I want you to exchange information with someone you don't know well. Maybe it's someone you've said hi to 100 times. Maybe it's someone who's here for the first time. Exchange information and set a date to go out for coffee together and listen, truly listen to each other's stories. Not just talking about the weather, but truly become neighbors, friends, and beloved community. Church, may it be so. Amen.